Dale Little here with Rescue American Ministries, and we've been in the book of Zechariah. We got started. We're in chapter 4 now, and we've got down to verse 10. I'm going to back up just a little bit because we hurriedly went through those, trying to cover as much as we could on that first segment. I was really hoping to do the chapter in one session, but just was not able to do it. There's too much there, and so. This vision that Zechariah had here in chapter 4. Now he's already had a couple of visions, and so here is chapter 4. He's has another vision. That's what the first few chapters of Zechariah are, of some of the visions that he had. And some of the problems that he was dealing with. Now, there are two main characters in this book. Besides Zechariah, there is Joshua, who was the high priest we talked about earlier, who God cleaned up. And there's different opinions. I went with the idea that Joshua had to have his filthy clothes replaced. And I don't know that much about him. I don't know anyone else that does that much. I don't think the Bible tells too much about this particular Joshua, the high priest. I know that they hadn't been, as far as I know, fulfilling those duties during their captivity. And some have speculated that this dirty garments that Joshua had on that had to be taken off and put clean garments on was the dirt and filth of the nation that he had taken on. And that may be included, but I don't think it excluded he himself also. So he may have been, those dirty garments may have represented not only his uncleanness before God, but also the nation of Israel. And so it may be more so one than the other, but both are true. At any rate, we're here in chapter 4. And so we had Joshua, and then there's the governor that was appointed to govern this area by the king of Persia when they were allowed to come back. This was still their conquered territory after they overthrew the Babylonians, who had first conquered it and taken the children of Israel captive. And then came the Persians, Cyrus and the Persians, and they had permitted the people to go back to the land and resettle, but they appointed governors. And so Zerubbabel is the governor here, and he's the other figure that's in this. And so we see here that the in verse 6, and we covered this. Then he said unto me, This is the word of the Lord to the Zerubbabel, the governor, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, said the Lord of hosts. Who are you, great mountain, before Zerubbabel? You shall become a plain, and he shall bring forward the top stone amid shouts of grace to it. So, well, what are these mountains that Zerubbabel was facing? There's a lot of them. They had a lot of opposition from the surrounding people that wanted that. It's much like today. That was Israel's land that God had promised to them. Babylonians had removed them, and so all these other people wanted to lay claim to it. Just like the Palestinians today want to lay claim to the land that God has given to Israel. And so they face those same enemies, those same consequences in a sense. And yeah, here's and I've loved some of the quotes that I get from Warren Wiersbe's book. Some of are pretty good, and some of his quotes out of it's what I get most. I like to get a little different perspective, see what other people have gotten from some of these passages in difficult places in the Bible, but here is what he had to say about the mountains. What mountains was Zerubbabel facing? Discouragement among the people, opposition from the enemies around them, poor crops, an unstable economy, people not obeying God's laws. Problems not too different from those the people of God have faced throughout the centuries, and that's very true. Those are very common things that difficulties that we face as we try to do God's work. And so Zerubbabel had those mountains that he faced, but God said, I'm going to take care of those. We dwell too much on circumstances sometimes as Christians. And I like to think of it as, yes, we do run into opposition. We do run into difficulties many times. But to me, if you stop and think about it, every difficulty, every problem is an opportunity for God to show himself powerful. And it's he that is in control. Now, again, God spoke. It said, then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. His hand shall also complete it. Then you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. The Zerubbabel saying is God's going to verify that he has sent Zechariah to them, because the prophecy he is giving concerning Zerubbabel will be fulfilled. And when it's fulfilled, then the nation of Israel there that has come back will recognize that Zechariah is a prophet of God. And so he said, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house, and his hand shall also complete it. That was guaranteed by God. Now, that reminds me of over in Philippians 1:6, where it talks about eternal life. It talks about salvation. And it says that God said, or this said of God, that God started. Paul said, I have confidence that God will complete that he started. That's not the exact wording, depending on which translation. There's many translations today. Many are paraphrased, and many are worded a little differently. They're saying the same thing. But that which God starts, he will complete it in that day. I am glad that Philippians 1:6, I didn't start things. God did. And because God started the work of salvation in me, he will complete it. And he will complete it in you also. Now, if I had started, I'd be in trouble. Because I probably wouldn't complete it then, wouldn't be able to. But God said he started it, and he'll complete it in that day. And so, to me, that's what eternal life is, eternal, just as it says. Now, let's pick up in and back up. I did want to cover one more thing. Where it says, not by might, he told Zerubbabel, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. How we need to hang on to that today. I'm afraid American Christians today have given up the fight, the spiritual fight. And we're in a battle. I mean, there's no doubt this nation, that America is divided, strongly divided. It has been, and, to some extent, it has been from the beginning of time, but not so much as it is today. I don't know if it's ever been as divided as this today, unless you look back to the Civil War days. But at any rate, we're greatly divided. And I'm afraid that many Christians have given up on this part, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. I'm afraid we have given up the spiritual fight to take on the physical. That we think we're going too soon. Now, I believe that there's a time to fight for freedom. I believe, in the early days of this nation, at the founding of the nation, before it was actually founded, that men took action, but they had fought that spiritual fight. And I'm afraid today, though, that men are too quick, that Christians are too quick to want to abandon this spiritual fight and jump right into the physical. That they want to do it by might and by power. And God says He's not in that. We want to quit the spiritual battle too soon. And in some ways, the spiritual battle is more difficult than the physical, than the by power and by might. I'm afraid we've abandoned too soon. I think there's time, you have to take action, but I'm afraid we've abandoned it too soon. Letting God do His work. I just don't see. If you look on social media, I was looking this morning on my email or on my Facebook that verses of Scripture out of 2 Timothy, where it talks about in the latter days that all these things would come. And I looked at that list of things, and then I look on social media at the things that Christians are discussing and arguing about and pointing the finger about. And I don't see any of those things in that list in 2 Timothy. So we've abandoned those things that God, through His Word, has warned us about. And we're arguing and pointing the finger about things that's not included there. Now, I do think that we cannot entirely withdraw from the issues of this world that we live in. We do live in this world in the present time, in the flesh. But unfortunately, we've let Satan choose our battleground for us, I think, our place of battle. The enemy often, if he wants to draw you away from the main front, let's take the example of D-Day, when the Allied troops invaded Europe against Hitler and his regime. They faked battles, and the Allies made it appear that they were going to invade it a couple of other places, especially one place. I don't remember all the details to that, but they didn't tip their hat that they were just coming in where they did. They lured the enemy to fight these other battles over here by sending, small groups, so to speak. Maybe it wasn't that small, but it wasn't the main force. And the idea was to get the enemy to go over here and fight these battles that may have been important, but they left many of the troops out of the main battle thrust where the Allies went in at. And it allowed them to go in and defeat the enemy. I'm afraid that's what Satan has done today. He's with God's people. He's lured us over here, to these peripheral things that may be important, but we've gone over there, and that's all we're focused on over here. When Satan's main attack is right down the middle here, some other place, and we need to get back into that battle. We need to get back in the place where the Word of God gives us. And that's in 2 Timothy. In the latter days, all these things are going to come. And like I say, I don't see any of the main arguments and the other issues on Facebook today that even touch on any of this by Christians, by God's people, and sometimes even by men of God. And so let's focus on the spiritual things. If we're going to fight the battle, we like I say, if we lose this battle, and it's possible, people seem to think that, well, this is America, we can't fall. God's not going to allow it. I mean, he established this nation. Yeah, I believe he did. I believe that this nation would not exist if it had not been for God's sovereign grace and his interference. I mean, some of the battles that were won in the American Revolution that seemed impossible. I mean, here's the mighty Great Britain, and here's these little group of colonists here in America, and we're able to defeat them against the overwhelming odds, impossible looking odds. And yet God gave the victory. I believe that. But just because God gave us the victory, because God gave us this nation, he didn't promise it forever. He didn't say, here it is, you just do as you please. And God is still calling for repentance in this nation today. And we're wanting to ignore it. We're wanting to go fight. And that's where it gets hard. We don't want to fight that battle because we don't want to look inside and let God expose what's in here, that we haven't really been sold out to him. And that's difficult. It's painful. When God convicts us of how we have abandoned him in so many ways, and when that begins to hit home and he begins to pull back the curtain and show us, here, you want to see? It's hard. But we need to face that. And too many Americans are unwilling to face that, and they want to go off and fight these other battles and fight it by other means. Well, if you do that, you're fighting a losing battle. It's kind of like Apostle Paul talked about on the ship he was going to Rome on. And the storm came. And men were wanting to abandon the ship. And Paul said, if you abandon the ship, you're going to die. The only way everybody's going to survive, God has shown him in a dream that if everybody stayed with the ship, they would survive. Now, the ship broke apart, but they all survived. And if we dare, if we don't get back into this spiritual battle, I'm afraid, the battle's going to be lost. I'm not saying, like I said the first time, we are in this world, we have to deal with some of these things, but don't let these things occupy all of our time. Let's get back into the Word of God and see what he says. I mean, we've got false teachers everywhere. And that's part of the problem. Some of these false teachers, false prophets are prophesying, and we too willingly join with them sometimes. I watched so many of these false prophets prophesy Donald Trump's victory in the last election. He was going to serve another 4 years. You might say, well, if it hadn't been for this, well, he actually won. Well, he's not sitting in the White House today, is he? He's not president. That's what they were prophesying. He would serve 4 more years. And that election was going to be his. I don't know. You can look back at some of the teachings that I did before then. You'll see that I was telling people that you better not bank on that. And sure enough, all these prophets that prophesied that were lying because they had not heard from God like they said they had. They did what Jeremiah said the false prophets his day were doing. They were preaching and prophesying what was in their own mind, their own imaginations of their own mind and their own heart, not what God gave them. And so we accept them. I watched one in desperation. One of my friends on Facebook, on desperation, trying to reach out when it began to become apparent that that election may not go the way that they wanted it to, they were looking for it to. And I was reading the post on there. I was reading the comments. Oh, and here come this super spiritual word of faith person. Oh, no. No need to pray. You don't need to ask God. Just go ahead and proclaim it. Let your mouth proclaim it and it'll be true. That's basically what it was saying. And so my friend said, I'll proclaim it with you. Abandoning the truth of God's word. And I said, let me know how that works out. Well, I saw how it worked out, but of course nobody said anything. I'd like to say, well, hey, I'd like to go back and what happened? You guaranteed this. You didn't have that power that you thought you had. I mean, these people that say they have this power of the tongue and this, speak things into existence, and then it happens time and time again that it doesn't work. How did they say that's of God? How do they say, well, you just do this? Because they happened to say one time and it happened? Well, any psychic can, prophesy the future. And if they do enough prophecies, if they do enough predictions, a few of them are going to come true. But if you're prophesying from God, and that's the reason I said, and I keep saying it. Yeah, I give some prophecies through this series. They're coming right out of here, not up here. Satan, the Bible says to test the spirits, whether they be of God or not. And right here's the test. Satan can put things in here too. He can put things in yours. And he does. We've got to be able to sort them out. Too many people think whatever comes in there, that's of God. And so they spout it off. It wasn't of God. Those are the things that this nation's going to be answering for. Those are the things that are bringing this nation down. It's this false prophecy. And, there's no need to repent. Just get in there and fight these battles. Don't repent. You don't have to do that. It's not your fault. It's all these other people's fault. There's nothing wrong with you. You're good. Good. Oh, my. When are we going to learn, or will we? I'm telling you the truth. Okay, let me hurry. We're still, I haven't even got into the rest of the chapter yet that I plan to get into. Verse 10, for whoever has despised the day of small things shall rejoice and shall see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. Now, the plumb line, I don't have anything. I'm looking around to see if I've got something. And yeah, I've got something close here I can use. Just give me a second. Didn't really meant to have this ready. Most of you know what a plumb line is, but there may be a few that don't. Now, people talk about plumb line. I've heard them talk about using a plumb line to level something. It doesn't level, it plumbs. When you level something, it's this way. No, it's either level or it's unlevel. But when you plumb something, it's this way. Now, this is an electrical cord, so it's not straight. But what a plumb line is it has a heavy weight on this end of a string, And there's a couple ways you can use it. One is that if you have a point on the ground or on the floor, you lower it to that point to where, and it's plumb, they call it a plumb bob, will have a point on it. Get that point right on that mark. And if you need a point up here a certain distance from something, you can measure over to where that string is at, and that'll give you the proper distance to whatever you want to build. That's supposed to line up with it. Or if you need to get a point from something up here down on the floor, you do the same thing. You hold it up here against something, against the top of a wall, for instance, and put you some spacers down through there and drop it to a point and check your spacers all the way down. If they space correctly all the way down, up and down, then that wall is straight up and down. It's not leaning this way, it's not leaning that way. And that's always a problem, especially if it goes too far. That over time, that wall will begin, if it's the weight at the top, will begin to pull it over. So that's the plumb line. And I might ask the question, if God puts a plumb line up next to you, are you plumb? Are you in line with where God's word says you're supposed to be? Are we as a nation, as America, how does America come up against that plumb line? I'm afraid not too good. Like all the other nations, we come short. It says, for whoever despises the day of small things shall rejoice. Now, what happened was that when the temple was started, the new temple that they were building here, it was much smaller than Solomon's temple. And people who remembered Solomon's temple cried because it's so inferior, seemingly, to what Solomon had built. But Zechariah here, through God, is saying that those of you that despised that day of small things, that you wept over how small this new temple is going to be, you'll end up rejoicing. And you'll see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. You'll see that Zerubbabel, and he's telling them that Zerubbabel is God's man to do this job as governor. And it says, these seven are the eyes of the Lord, which reigns through the whole earth. Then I said to him, what are those two olive trees on the right and on the left of the lampstand? Remember, we talked about that in the last session. I have to hurry here. These two olive trees symbolized a continual flow of oil into the lampstand. Now, the lampstand in the temple, the literal lampstand, had the priest had to continually refill the oil into those lamps to keep them burning. And it gave light into that area where the sacrifices were made. And so with these two olive trees, they symbolized that there was going to be a continual flow of oil. The priest wasn't going to have to refill that lampstand. It was going to have a continual flow of oil in it. And the second time I answered and said to him, what are these two branches of the olive trees, which are beside the two golden pipes from which the golden oil is poured out? And he said to me, do you not know what these are? Again, this question, I just keep saying, do you not understand this? Do you not know this? I said, no, my Lord. Then he said, these are the two anointed ones who stand by the Lord of the whole earth. These are the two anointed ones, talking about Zerubbabel and Joshua, that God had anointed to do the job. Joshua as the high priest and Zerubbabel as the governor, to do the job of getting the temple up and going. God appoints men to do work, to do his work. And God will confirm those men when he has put them in a place. Now, it would do us well to be in tune enough with God to learn who God has appointed and who He has not. And that goes from people in the church, in the ministry, right on up to government, to the President of the United States, to the nations. People talk about, well, America don't need to be the world's policeman. Why not? Why not? Who do you want to be the world's policeman? Somebody's going to be. Who do you want to be? Oh, I'd like to have a group of nations, different nations to come together and rule and govern. Well, that's going to happen. Yeah, the Bible's already told us about it. Look in the book of Revelation, and you'll see that there's a league and a group of nations that come about to rule the world. They're the world's policemen. And out of that midst, there's always one. Of course, there's more. Out of that midst comes the Antichrist. And he's going to start overthrowing the others, because there's always people that want to be they want to be in charge. And you'll have a number of them in that group of 10 nations that's going to want to be in charge. But the Antichrist is going to come, and he'll be in that mix, and he will defeat several of the others. I think 7 or something like that. We'll get into that later. We'll get into the book of Revelation after we finish Zechariah. So yeah, there you have it. That's what you'll have. It's no better. God has given America the power to do this job. And we forfeit that responsibility, then somebody else will take it. ISIS, the Taliban, Communist China. Take your choice. Somebody will fill that void. And now that desperation will be somewhere that these 10 nations will come together and say, oh, well, we need to come together and do this. But even among them, there is that ungodly power struggle that they're going to be in charge. And it's not going to be God. Even though God raised up a godly nation that we've been, but we've been abandoning that bit by bit for a long time as we've begun to do some ungodly things. But yet we still stand, I think, among nations primarily in a position of influence for good, for the most part. But much of that influence is for evil. We've seen some of the things that some of the administrations have done and tried to force on other nations ungodly things. So, where does that leave us? Well, we basically have deserted our responsibility to be our neighbor's keeper, to be our brother's keeper. Even though that may be a stretch, yeah, you can say, well, these people over here, they're not our brothers and sisters, talking about people around us. Well, basically it is, but as nations go, we have neighbors around the rest of the world. As nations go, we have brothers, in a sense, around the rest of the world. So, have we abandoned them? That's what it looks like today in Afghanistan. Here on August 30th, 2021. Now, they're trying to undo some of what they did now. the ungodly and messed up plans of just withdrawing and leaving our friends, even some of our own people there at the mercy of the Taliban. So, I'll close with that. Don't know where else to go with this right now, but we need to get back on track. We need to get back in God's Word. We need to get back in the spiritual battle. In other words, we maybe spend this little bit of time over here on the worldly affairs that we have to be involved with. And we need to spend much more effort on the spiritual battles. We've got it backwards. Many of you have got it backwards. You're so involved in the physical world battles that you've lost track. You've forgotten that God says it's not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, which tells us that we don't trust Him. Decide we've got to take things into our own hands and do it our own way. We just can't trust God to do it. And you call yourself a child of God. Let's get back on track. Dale Little, Rescue America Ministries.